Hi there, I'm Michael Bovee with Consumer Recovery Network. Thanks for tuning in to DebtBytes, our YouTube channel. And today I'm going to talk about how many calls it takes to get a result from a debt collector. Doesn't matter who the debt collector is, whether they work for your bank, whether they work for a debt buyer, or what's most common, which is a contingency debt collector that creditors send accounts to after they've given up trying to collect from you. So I've been at this a lot of years, a couple of decades, and I usually cannot get in and out of a negotiation inside of one phone call. It's just not that common, and so you shouldn't expect to do that either. When I'm dealing with the client file, I'm often making 3 or more calls. So you should expect the same thing. Can you get a one call and done, get them, to send you the agreement in writing so you can pay it? Yeah, it happens. So don't assume that if things are going that well, that something's wrong and maybe you're leaving money on the table, or things aren't going exactly how they should, because it can go like that. Just be prepared for multiple calls, sometimes as many as 6 or more. So what that tells us is that if you're in a hurry, if you need to get something done, and I mean really quickly so you can close on a home or something like that, you have to be both patient and quick, which you can do in a rapid succession of several days. But by and large, it's better for you, it's better for somebody like me that does the work I do, when I'm not pressed for time, when I can slow play an account and I can make several calls over several weeks, or use end of month strategies that I've talked about in other videos, and I'll briefly touch on here too. When you're calling, sometimes that first call is all about just setting the table. Hey, I'm interested in resolving this. You're showing some willingness, which all debt collectors want to talk with somebody who's willing to resolve a debt. But you're not really divulging or going into your ability yet, and that's the other ingredient that they need, or one of the two, and they can make up the difference in the other. So willingness and ability to pay. You have the money, you have the resources. So starting off with, hey, I'm just reaching out to try and find out what can be done about this account. I am not working. I have limited income. Whatever I can do, I'm going to have to try and look for outside resources or get creative to come up with the money. I just want to know what's out there, what's possible. I've ignored this long enough, kind of thing. And that doesn't matter if you're 5 months behind or 2 years behind. I mean, that kind of opening is okay. And when you hear that feedback, say, great, okay, thanks. And you know what? They always want all their money, or they want payment plans, and they'll talk to you about that. You're not being very direct in that, hey, I'm calling to settle, right? You're just making that opening. And sometimes that's enough. Or they start to have dialogue with you about, hey, offer, counter offer. It might be too early for that. You might not be comfortable with that. It might just be the intro call that you need one time, the first debt that you're trying to negotiate, until you kind of get a feel for it and get over that hump, that fear of, man, I got to talk to a debt collector. It's not that big a deal. You don't have to be that fearful. It's not that much of a confrontation. I want to empower you. I want you to feel good about making those calls, and sometimes just easing into it with just a broad, hey, I just want to know what's possible kind of thing, and then you politely hang up and you make your second call, sometimes a week later, sometimes closer to the end of the month, when you know that they may be a little hungrier to resolve an account because they want to meet their internal goals. That collector might need to bonus out, not quite there, collected enough for the month. Their supervisor, supervising a team of 10 people, may not be close, and they're more likely to approve a better deal. End of the month strategies will work. And so maybe your second call is around the 20th or the 24th or something like that. And this time you're saying, look, I reached out to family, I reached out to friends, or I got creative and I sold the 10-speed in my garage that I don't ride, whatever. And that call is more about money, and you're making an offer. A lot of times your ability to settle has to have some realistic expectations attached to it. Settling for pennies on the dollar, we've got a video about that. It doesn't happen if by pennies we're talking less than a dime on the dollar. So who you owe, how old the debt is, where you live, sometimes what appears to the debt collector on your credit report, because they have real-time access to that. All of that is going to help them form an opinion about how collectible you are. And sometimes you can make low offers and get those through, but oftentimes it's not going to be 20 cents on the dollar. That's possible. 30 cents on the dollar is probably more realistic for most people to be prepared for, anywhere between 30 and 50, and again, it depends. So share your situation, who you're dealing with, the backstory of your account in the comments below, and I can respond to you with some actionable feedback. When you make that call and you make that offer, maybe they make a counter and you're like, wow, okay, I'm sure that's a really good deal, but I can't take it. And so now we politely hang up and we're going into our third call, and maybe we make it 2 days before the end of the month and say, well, I offered $2,000 on that $10,000 balance, and you said you know, lowest you guys could go was 4, but I can't get there. I did, however, talk to a friend who I wasn't really sure would be able to lend me the money, and they've got 1,000 of it, so now I've got 3,000. So now you've made a counter offer, and you're within the realm of realistic expectations to resolve something, again, depending on the circumstances. And so that's the third call, and they, you know, put you on hold, and they come back and they say, okay, we've got a deal, not quite at 3, but 32. And you're like, okay, I'm going to cover the difference. Okay, just give me that in a letter and fax it to me or email it to me. If you need a fax number, by the way, there's some free ones sometimes through efax.com and other services. That's the quickest way to get it to you so that you can take advantage of that end of the month thing, or make sure you get it lettered for payment by, say, middle of the next month or something like that. So that's a 3-call type of explanation. Like I said, there are times where you need to go longer. A lot of the times in litigation files where somebody's trying to settle a judgment that happened 4 years ago, and outreach, you know, as long as you know that and you've prepared for yourself, and we cover this in some of the other videos about how to avoid garnishment or bank account levy, things like that when you're dealing with judgment debt, be aware of those things. But also know that when you're dealing with settlements on judgments, it's typically more than 3 calls. That's my experience in helping coach people up through that process and even doing them as a professional. It takes a little bit longer, and you do have to exercise additional patience. Now, here's something that me and guys like me, that, you know, guys that I connect with that are part of the network at CRM, we talk and we call it just, you know, going dark, or, you know, just playing the long ball. But there are times where you separate, if you have the ability and the, you know, resources and time, and not in a hurry, to slow play or go dark for a month, 2, 3 in between offers. And sometimes that's what it takes. So there's no one way to negotiate a debt. There's no one certain amount of calls and things to say on each and every call that I can script out for you. But it is pretty basic for the most part, and you're showing willingness and ability when you reach out to these people. And first, reach out, second, make an offer. So they're going to be receptive. It's just about a meeting of the minds and your abilities. Never agree to something that you can't afford, and don't expect to get it done all in one phone call. See you on the next video.